Hey everybody, welcome back to How to Cope When Stuff Gets Real. My name is Katie and I'm here with Debbie, and we're going to talk today about how we manifest when life is hard and how we stay in alignment with new beginnings when the shit is hitting the fan in your life. That's how I was hearing to word it from the guides. And I think hopefully a lot of people will be able to relate to our conversation today. But before we drop into that, I just thought we could do a little check-in. We're recording this at the end of December on the tail end of 2024, moving into 2025. And let's just check in and see what's going on and how we're feeling and share a little bit of our personal process with folks as well. So, Debbie, how were your holidays and how are you doing?
I think we should start with you, Katie, first.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Some people that watch my channel know that my father passed away very unexpectedly on December 1st. What I haven't really talked about publicly is that it was death by suicide. And I have mentioned a little bit that my dad and I had a strained relationship for the last 3 years. And I am in what is known as, it's an actual clinical term, complicated grief.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting that when we landed on our title for this show, it was How to Cope When Stuff Gets Real. And a couple of days later, my life got real to a degree that even I feel like is a 2020 special. And it's been a really challenging December. I'm okay on most days. There are some days where I'm really not okay. And I think that's to be expected. My years of working with people in grief, I understand that. But what's been challenging for me is navigating this with all of the other nuances and all the things that I'm finding out after my father's passing about choices that he was making. It's hard. And it's a very complicated thing to talk about because the emotions are really complicated and multifaceted. And we talked in our last conversation about how many people take their own lives over the holidays. And we are very much, as my guides have been telling me, in a portal where there's a lot of death happening right now. And so it wasn't the most festive Christmas, to be honest. And I'm really looking forward to stepping into 2025. But there are so many things that are falling away that it's hard to figure out what's manifesting. So I think our conversation today is very appropriate.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please.
What are some little things that you're doing to help you cope?
I can give you my 3D human coping mechanism and my spiritual coping mechanisms because they're two different things. I've been very proud of myself because in the past I would normally go to sweet things to try to make my life sweeter, and that hasn't really been happening. But what I have been doing is reading a lot of fiction and a lot of fantasy novels. And interestingly, all of the characters are strong female protagonists who are overcoming really difficult obstacles and finding their power. That's what I keep getting drawn into. That honestly is keeping me sane and helping me process in my downtime. There's something to be said about when you're reading the experience of a character and identifying with that character's experience, how that helps you to process things. So that's my 3D thing that I've been doing. And it's also an honoring of just wintertime energy because I think we should be moving a little slower right now. On the spiritual side, connecting and meditating and dropping in with my guides and doing my practices and asking for help from those around me who are also spiritually connected and getting clarity and getting things mirrored back to me that I need to understand and process has been really helpful as well. But I've been doing a lot less. I'm used to working all the time and doing videos all the time and doing all kinds of things. I've gone a little quiet on social media and quiet on my YouTube channel to give myself the last few weeks to just be with everything that's arising. And this is going to be a long process. I'm trying not to make it a job because sometimes it feels like our healing work can become a job. So yeah, one day at a time. That's how I'm taking it.
I'm proud of you. You've been through a lot in the last several weeks, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for asking for help,
Mm.
and I'm proud of you for slowing down.
Thank you. Thank you so
And
much, Debbie. Yeah,
yeah,
and it helps to just talk about it. It's One of my catharsis is being able to share what's going on in my life and share whatever wisdom comes out of those experiences. And so I can see on the other side of this at some point, there's going to be a massive amount of support that I can give to other people who have had similar experiences to me. And so that will come eventually. But right now, I'm just focused on how do I navigate this very different energy and interesting new beginning that I find myself in.
So moving forward, how is this new year different for you now that you've experienced such a close and um, traumatic death?
I have been checking in with myself a lot and noticing that there is something inside of me that has shifted to such an extreme degree that I can't quite explain it in words. There's always this knowing that when we go through something really hard, that it's like a trial by fire kind of thing, right? We come through that and there's some strength that we find that we didn't know we had and some capacity that we find that we didn't know we had. And that's definitely something that I can feel inside of me on a really like practical, energetic, and spiritual level. What I feel like is happening for everybody in the collective, not just myself, is that we're moving through a huge shift in our divine masculine and our masculine energy on this planet. And for me, my father line and the pain that my father was in and the way he push that pain onto other people rather than taking responsibility for it in his own process. And so I feel like in 2025, there's a reclamation for me and my power of how I sit in my masculine energy, because we all have both, and how I hold my own personal container and my own knowing. And there had just been so many things that have confirmed the boundaries that I had set in the last 3 years with my father, just so many things confirmed as to why I needed to do that and why those choices were the right choices. And the old version of me would have had a whole lot of guilt and shame about a choice that I didn't make. And I'm proud of myself for the work that I've done to hold a different container for myself and have love for myself in this very difficult process. And so I'm hoping that next year is there's a lot of new beginnings that are coming. And I can feel that there's all these wonderful things happening at the same time as these really hard things. I don't know what that's going to manifest into yet. I feel like I'm in a in between or holding place right now, where things are being worked on the etheric plane that I have no idea why they're all happening at once. So I'm trying to just show up every day and be excited about whatever that looks like, even though I don't know what it's going to be yet.
Mm, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I what you said made me think about all the ways that I've shifted and really worked to not betray myself anymore. So that I think that really does cut down on any guilt or shame for anything, because if you're really staying true and centered to yourself, then whatever happens may be difficult, but it's easier to process for sure. That's for sure. And I also think this time of year, I also think a lot about, I think there's always so many people passing at this time of year, and there's always so many people making resolutions for the new year. And I came across this process by Gretchen Rubin,
Mm.
and I originally did it in 2023. It was 23 for 23. And when I sat down to make this list, and I can explain a little more, but my process was like, okay, what do I want to experience this next year if it's my last year, if it's my last year in a body? So it's really not going to be anything to do with, okay, I've got to lose 25 pounds. I have to like have more money. It had nothing to do with that. It really had more to do with the senses, because I'm in a physical body, and what do I really want to experience? So I really gave that a lot of deep thought, and it ended up being such a great way to move through the year, because checking those things off really gave me a lot of joy, a lot of little joy, instead of carrying over the things that I wanted to accomplish year after year. Okay, maybe I made more money this year. Now I want to make more. Okay, now I want to get in better shape. Now I want to, it's just, it just was a much better way to move through the year.
Can you give me an example of what
Sure.
that looks like, what some of those were for, I think that will help those that are listening too.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, for that year, I had things on it like I want to wear more dresses. I want to actually swim in the ocean, not just stick my feet in the ocean. I actually want to put my body in the ocean. I want to eat at this particular barbecue place in Charlotte. Again, I wanted to hold a baby and just the way that those things, and then I forgot about it. And then I was in Hilton Head taking care of my mother. I just had another surgery, and my daughter flew in, and we had just stopped by the beach, and I was in a dress. And I turned to her and I said, I think I'm going in. And she said, What are you talking about? I said, I think I'm going to go swimming. She's, Mom, in a dress? Yes, I'm going in a dress. And I literally went in to the ocean in a dress and I went swimming, and she thought I was insane, but it was so much fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. And then I ended up buying something from this couple and they had a baby, which was nice. I didn't hold the baby, but then they invited me to their child's first birthday party because they weren't from town. They didn't know a lot of people and they wanted people to come to the party. So they invited me and I had two babies on my lap and one crawling up my leg. And I thought, oh, this is actually on my list. This is so fun. So, this sort of thing just was so fun for me during the year. And it brought a lot of little joyful moments in my year instead of having this big goal, which I still have goals, but it just was a fun way to really think about what I want to experience while I have an able body. And this year I put ride a bike again because I thought, it's been a while since I've ridden a bike, and I would really love to do that while I can. So many people can't. So that's how I like to think about that list. And I'll say that I actually shared this with somebody who's in very deep, similar grief to yours right now, very new, very fresh, very difficult. And at first, she was not understanding. Like she was back into the old, okay, when I have the money and when I get my hip done, and I thought, no, there's things that you can do. And once she got it and it clicked with her, she has more on her list this year than I do. So she wants to cut flowers and bring them in her yard and bring them into the house. She wants to grill more food. She wants to go to the shore and eat chowder. It's just she had a lot of fun with this, and I think it can just be an out of the box thing too. I don't know how we got talking about this, but we were talking about how neither of us had been to Aldi. And I said, I've never been there. I'm like, well, you should go. I'm going to put that on your list. And she's, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I've never been, so I'm going to put that on my list too. It's just something like that. And it's fun. It'll be fun when I'm walking through Aldi trying to figure that grocery store out, or and just knowing that it's on my list and I can check it off just will bring me some joy. Knowing that she's doing it too, right? Yeah. So that's one tool that I give people that seems to really help.
I like that. It's very much how I like to experience joy is through new experiences and travel and adventure. And that doesn't mean you have to go far. One of the homework assignments I give some of my female clients sometimes, and sometimes my male clients too, if they're working on their yin or feminine energy, is I tell them to go have a wander day where
Mm.
they don't have a schedule, they don't have a set plan, and I tell them to just have some things in their car that they might need for the day and just leave and spend the whole day out and see where you get taken to by spirit and what experiences you have. And there's a beauty in that kind of yin energy of being without a plan and going with the flow and following the synchronicities and following the signs and signals that the universe is giving us. And I normally give that homework assignment for folks who have a very regimented, structured, very masculine existence.
Mm.
And it's funny to me because they often really struggle with that homework assignment because it can create an anxiety inside of them of this feeling of I need to be doing something else with my time. I need to be doing. And so I like that maybe we could couple that assignment with your list assignment. And so they don't know what of those things they're going to cross off, but they've got some ideas of things that they might want to experience, even in their local area where they live. I think it's really easy to get in a rut. And I stopped doing long-term planning and goals for the most part years ago after I left the corporate space because I just was so burnt out on the end of year planning and all that stuff. And I have high level ideas of things that I want to experience in my work and the number of people I want to reach and those kinds of things. But I like to think of them as more a magnetic energy that is drawing my soul to experiences versus a goal that I'm trying to climb towards and make happen through force and effort. And so, one of my pet peeves for manifestation and New Year's resolutions and all of that is the pressure that it puts on people that their life as they're living it in this moment isn't already enough. And especially, I think for me right now, because of so many difficult things that I'm processing at once, I don't have the capacity to be in overdrive right now. I don't have the capacity to be trying to put a 10-year plan together and be perfect in all these things. It's just not possible. And so there's a level of surrender that I'm accessing right now that is actually new for me, even though I've been on this spiritual path for a long time. I'm a type A personality. And so the level of surrender that this has put me in is magical in its own way. So I'm going to try to remember that as I move through this next year and really just leaning into that surrender energy as much as possible.
Mm, I love that. And I love the wander day. That's great. I'm also thinking about times that my life has really gone sideways and how it's difficult for me to even formulate a vision of what I want moving forward. And so these practices, I think, are helpful, and just little chunks of joy are really helpful and can really help, I think, in forming a new vision for yourself when life goes sideways. Um, I saw this quote the other day and I wrote it down because I knew we would be talking about this. And it just really struck home for me is that you don't know how to live a life you love, how to survive and adapt to a life you don't. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes so much sense. It's actually true. And I think that's been a struggle for me to try to figure that out. So I love the Wonder Day, and I love these little practices. And I also think that, and these things they don't require another person. They don't require like a big friends group. They don't require a lot of money. They don't require a lot. So I think it's because I think when you feel so depleted,
Mhm.
um, with whatever you're struggling with, you can feel like, oh, I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to spend the money, or I don't have anybody to do it with, or I'd rather do it with somebody or something. I think just doing it is important. So,
And I would venture a guess that everybody has a list somewhere in the back of their brain of things that they are always trying to get around to that they know would be little joy moments for them. And I don't know how we shift out of, as a culture, this tendency to be in overdrive all the time. But I do know as individuals, we can make a difference in that. There's a lot of programming that comes at us all the time of do more, be more successful, all of those things. And I think the only way we get out of that paradigm is by individually making choices that are really in alignment with us in each moment and finding that little bit of joy wherever we can. There's so much medicine in those small moments of laughter and joy, but we tend to almost negate those and say that they're not important, right? That this other thing is more important. And I think part of our process in humaning is figuring out how we find balance in all of these things at once, right? We can be going through really hard things and we still have to claim the joy whenever we can find it, even if it's fleeting in the moment, still experiencing that as much as we can.
mm, totally. I also think that there have been times when making a list like this would have been so overwhelming for me. I am not up for this. And if I didn't have someone like me walking me through it, I don't know if I would have done it. But I think the signs and synchronicities that you mentioned are like really important because they're always there. And all you have to do is really pay attention to that. And um, I honestly have to keep coming back to this and coming back to it and coming back to it in my life because I'm like, yeah, I'm not really actually, if I do become aware enough, it's they're all around me all the time. And I have this little journal, my little journal that and I've started using that again. And it's so helpful to flip back through it and say, yeah, actually, the universe does show up for me, actually, when I pay attention, even during the most difficult time. So I've started that again this month.
I always tell people when they're trying to manifest something, like they want a new job or a new partner or something big, right? Something that they are hinging a lot of their happiness on, it, even if it's something around their health. The more we focus on that and the more energy we put into that, we almost become attached to an outcome there and we strangle the energy, if you will. We suffocate it.
Yes.
And as we are so focused on that and we're have all of our attention there and we begin to constrict the energetics of that, spirit can't intercede, right? Because we're trying to control so much. And so what I like about this idea of these kind of small joyful moments as goals, if you will, or resolutions or intentions is it gives us something to redirect our focus to that might flow. It's very hard to get in the flow of receiving when you're in a stuck place. And
Mhm.
so it's often that refocusing towards something that is joyful or is has the energetics of flow in it that allows that energy over here that's not moving to unstick itself. And then all of a sudden we turn back and we're like, oh wow, look, there's movement over here. And I actually didn't have to do anything. I just had to get in alignment with that state of flow, that state of joy, that state of receiving. And then the universe was able to intercede on my behalf and bring something forward for me that I couldn't have even imagined. And I think that's a very valuable and important thing when we're trying to manifest because a lot of the manifestation coaches and people like that are they're telling you to do vision boards and do this and do that and you must do your ritual every day and say all of your affirmations and all of that. You can become hyper focused on that and actually create the opposite energy of what you're looking for.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, in our last conversation, you mentioned that you were purging, physically purging your space.
Mhm. Yes.
And have you noticed that movement of energy has created any openings for you since you've been doing? I know it does for me. Even when I think, oh, does this really work? Or I won't even think about it and I'll clean out my closet, start organizing my closet and start purging that, and then something will happen. So interesting.
Yeah, I think intuitively, when we talked last, it was before everything happened with my dad, and I was in a pretty deep purge of grief and physical things. And I've learned over the years that when that comes up, even if I don't know what it is that I'm grieving or what it is that I'm making space to release, I just follow the intuitive knowing that I have of what actions I need to take. And I'm very fortunate that the way my team and my higher self works with me is that I pre-grieve things before they happen. The version of me that's sitting here that's having this conversation with you probably wouldn't exist right now if I hadn't already been doing work leading up to everything that happened and been making that space. It's different because people don't look at grief like that, right? They look at it as it starts after the event happens. But I actually think the more in tune we are with our intuitive knowing, the earlier we begin releasing and processing things before the event even occurs, months and months in advance, if not years in advance. And that process of releasing physical items and making space in my home when I was in the middle of trying to process the shocking news that I got on December 1st, it was like, oh, my closet is clean and I can find things. And that's not on top of the other things that are going on. I can easily pack a bag to get to my mom's as soon as possible. It was like I was being pre-prepared for and given the tools that I needed, even in cleansing my space. And also, I thought I was going to have all this time off over the holidays where I wasn't going anywhere and visiting any family and all these things. And that got completely changed. And so I was grateful that I was already doing that because I didn't have the time that I normally would to get those things in order before the new year. So it all worked out exactly as it was meant to. And I know that there are good things coming in. I really have been trying to be mindful of being exactly where I am. And I have the deep belief and core inner knowing that there's something really important coming out of this next step and there's some magic coming. I don't know all of what that is yet. I have, of course, my human ideas of what I would like it to be, but I am just trying to be right here, right now with what is happening and being with it enough so that the process can come to completion in divine timing and that I can be with whatever emotions arise, no matter how complicated they are.
Mm, that's a great point. Do you find that your clients sometimes have a difficult time processing the good things that happen equal to the struggles that they have? That's
Yeah.
a poor way to word that. But when something good happens, people have a hard time coping also with that. They don't know what to do. What advice would you give to people?
Yeah, I've worked with people over the years who have had something really amazing happening, but it was so big that they were afraid of it, or they had wanted it for so long. And now that it's here, they're like, okay, well, who am I and what will I do next? There's almost a grief that can come up at the same time as something amazing. And I always tell them, like, when we're doing our trauma healing work, when we're doing our inner work and we're working through the process of nervous system regulation, all those things, we're not creating a container to stay in our trauma. We're creating a greater capacity to experience. And positive things can be just as ungrounding as the really difficult things. Sometimes the way our society is slanted, it's like, oh, we go into the hard things. Let's be in the struggle. I think especially in the spiritual realms and in even in religious context, there's almost a martyrdom energy that comes in with, oh, you've earned whatever this next thing is because look at all the struggle that you've been through. And I hope that as a society we can pull out of that because I really don't think it needs to be so struggle filled all the time. And I hope that we can expand as a society our capacity to experience joy and ease and collaboration and unity and all these things that my guides are always bringing through and all of the teachings of what we're trying to cultivate inwardly. I hope we can begin to cultivate that as a society. But I do think it takes practice to hold the joy because it's like that moment of, oh, if I experience this extreme amount of joy, what's coming on the other side of it? And so
Yeah.
we're expanding our capacity. When I think about my intuitive body and my emotional body and my energetic body, I'm working on expanding my capacity to have that full range of experience because I came here to be a human and to have this full range of experience. And this thing that's happening in my life, all the details and all the things around it, if I was to tell the whole story, you guys would be like, this is a 2020 episode because that's what it feels like. It's like a really warped reality thing that I'm experiencing. And I can see how, wow, look at this human experience that I'm having that is so palpable and almost so big that it's giving me an appreciation for the simple, small, easy things as well. That contrast is there. And I think when we're in those acute situations that are really extreme, it can be almost easier to be single-threaded and focused. And then in those moments where we don't have something like that going on, we can become so overwhelmed with so many different things going on at once and so many threads that we lose some of our potency in our individual frequency field. And so in those moments where we're going through something really hard, all of our focus comes into, I just have to process this one thing. And it simplifies things for a moment in a way, even though we're going through something so challenging. And I'm going to try to take that knowing with me of that focus because I feel like that's something that this experience has gifted me. It's cut some of the noise out. And I think that's what hard things do in our lives sometimes.
The processing, though, is when it's something so surreal, is could take years and
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I've been working on this for a while, even before this event. And I imagine this will be something that will be a part of my process to a degree for a long time. Just anything that's hard that somebody goes through, it becomes a part of your fabric. I don't want to be identified with it as that's my identity. I think it's easy for that to happen sometimes too. I've worked with clients over the years who have had horrific things that they've had to move through. And when people find out about it, it's like all that they can think about with that person. And so it's this is a part of my story, but it's not the whole story. And it's something that's going to allow me to be of service to a group of humans that have had an experience like what I've been through that maybe don't have anybody else to talk to about that. And so there's positive that can come out of that as well. But yeah, it's just a complex and interesting experience that I'm having right now. Very different than anything else I've experienced in this lifetime, but I'm sure I've had lots of other lifetimes that have been equally as complicated.
Same.
So, what are you feeling about this year that we're stepping into and what you want to carry into this year and how you want to experience 2025? What's your desire for that?
Like you, I think I've been preparing for it already. I think a lot of things are falling away. And like I said, not betraying myself has been big and only want to bring, I think that's the biggest thing for me is really having more compassion for myself and actually just not tolerating things that I've tolerated before and just working my way to I also have like you like to create good things happening and then really crazy things. So it's really an interesting space to be in now. So yeah,
Do you feel like that is, I always feel like our inner environment is a reflection of our outer environment and what we're experiencing in the collective. And I tend to go through things 6 months or more before the collective really has an extreme experience. I definitely think 2025, we're going to shake some stuff up this year in a way that we haven't experienced as a collective. And the guides keep saying, that we need to really focus on our own joy and our own experience and really get clear in that focus of what we're creating for ourselves and how we can be of service and stay that course as individuals while also keeping an eye on what's happening in the collective and being in a compassionate space holder role. And we've been preparing for this time period for a lot of years in terms of how we're holding our frequency and how we're maintaining our vibration and the things that are falling away. I'm hearing more and more people say, I'm not watching the news anymore. I'm not engaging with that. It's people are making different choices in terms of what they're putting their energy into. And that feels super important, I think, as a collective. I'm just noticing a trend in that where there's more people talking about that than ever.
for sure. And I think I was going to mention something that was helpful for me. Not that I didn't already know this, but it was a great little catchphrase for me to be running in my head as I was moving through the holidays was Mel Robbins' new book, Let Them. So that was I found that helpful. I didn't read the book, but I found it very helpful as I was moving through the holidays. Like, so I think you're right. I think people just focusing on their own, like, stay in my own lane, let them do their thing. And I really do think that's important moving forward through this year. So mhm.
I agree. I know I keep seeing, I follow her on Instagram and I keep seeing her posts, and there's a war cry in that term, right? Let them be as they are. Let them speak as the way speak in the way that they desire. Let them behave in the way they desire, and don't give our energy to things and people and systems that are making choices that are not going to be in alignment with our values and our morals and what we desire for ourselves. And the guides that I've been channeling for the last, I don't know how many years now, had the creator beings in the 12th dimensional collective, they always talk about just what I was saying earlier, like when you're trying to manifest, you focus on what's in flow. And so we've really got to, I think, as a collective, turn away from the fear and turn away from all of the scary stuff and trying to focus on that so much. It's going to be there whether we focus on it or not. And we've got to start to figure out how do we come together as a collective and how do we build something new? Because everything's going to fall apart. That's what the guides have been saying that for years. The financial systems, the government, all these things are going to fall apart. And I think we're seeing the trend of that in the world. And we can either let that be something that we just participate in the fall and we're in the scariness of it, or just like I'm trying to do in my life, we can see how that is falling away and it's making space for something new. And we can go over here and we can say, what do I want to dream into being? And claiming that creatorship and claiming that power that we all have as individuals to create something brand new that's never existed before, I think is something that we all as individuals need to start focusing on because there's nobody coming to save us as a collective, right? We got to do this as a team. We got to come together as individuals and as a team to make these new beginnings happen. And it's got to start with our own lives. Right? What are we doing to cultivate joy every single day that is putting us in the right frame of mind so that we cannot miss those opportunities to do the bigger things when they get presented to us?
Mm, that's great. I think that's great advice. Instead of bracing for what's coming, this unknown, just doing what you can with what you have to create something beautiful. It's great.
Yeah, and that self-love and that self-compassion that you're talking about is so important. I think my capacity for loving myself and having compassion for myself has expanded in the last month, and that's something that I don't want to lose. And I also don't want to just be able to do that when I'm going through hard things. And I want to be able to be in that compassionate and loving place for myself, even when my day's going really well.
Mhm.
Right? Because I think we can be our harshest critic, and then we open the door in that to welcome people into our lives who are expanding on that vibration, right? Of criticism and judgment and harm. And so we've got to set the tone inwardly of how we treat ourselves so that as we encounter individuals, we can recognize those who are not going to hold that same energy with us and put those boundaries in place that we need to, and then turn towards the people that will honor that self-love within themselves and within us as well.
Two-part question. The first part is how can people support you during this time right now? And I guess that's part of the same question is how what advice would you give for people who know someone going through what you're going through right now?
It's interesting because people don't know what to say when you're grieving something that's this complicated. And what's been really hard for me, and the reason why I wanted to share the bigger picture today of what's going on with me is that, when you say, oh, I'm or somebody's died suddenly, like the assumption is this simple grief of you're sad and you're devastated about the loss. In reality, the version of my father that people are grieving, I grieved a long time ago. And so just witnessing me in my process and going, wow, it looks different than what I expected, and that's okay. And I think there is no one size fits all for grief, and especially when you're someone who's had to put a boundary with someone or there's been no contact or the relationship has been strained. If you have somebody in your life who's grieving somebody in that way after having that kind of relationship, don't make comments like, and thankfully nobody has said this to me, but don't make comments like, you didn't have a relationship with them anyways, what do you care? Don't throw away their grief because in some ways they don't even couldn't even articulate to you how complicated it is to try to work through something when there were boundaries that the person set that they knew they needed to set to save themselves. And it's just really complicated. And so just being a good listener and having compassion and kind words is all that we would ask for, I think, if I was giving advice to somebody who has somebody going through that in their life.
What about you?
Mm, don't make me cry. I think just people showing up and continuing to care and just showing up. And every time I get to support somebody in doing their deep inner work, there's a part of me that gets to heal too. And so I'm grateful to be doing the work that I'm doing because it's not like I'm going to a 9 to 5 job every day and having to just turn this feeling part of myself off. I get to bring that version of me every single time. So if I cry, or if I have an emotional moment, just realize that's okay.
It is okay.
And I get to be an example of a deeply sensitive and feeling person who is experiencing something that some people will never experience in their life. And I get to own my emotions in that. And there's a huge gift for me in being able to just be me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're so loved, Katie. You're so loved.
Thanks, Debbie. I knew I was going to cry today. I shouldn't have put any mascara on. And I think as a collective, if I could sum it up, I think as a collective, there's an awareness within the field that everybody has that there's something different that's coming in this next year. And there's a lot of people, I think, who are going to have major shifts. And so, in general, being compassionate with each other and being kind and giving people a little bit of grace as long as it's safe for you to do, I think is what I would ask of the collective as we move into next year, because there's going to be some amazing, wonderful, huge leaps forward, and there are going to be some things that are going to really come to light that we're going to have to process as a collective. And I think the more compassion we can have for each other, the better.
Mm, I totally agree.
Yeah. Any final words from you?
First of all, I am wishing you all good things. I'm sending you a big hug through the computer. So, yeah, it's my final words.
All right. Thank you all for watching How to Cope When Stuff Gets Real. I think we had a pretty real conversation today about some pretty real stuff. I hope it helped. Please comment and let us know how things are going in your life and how this resonates with you. And Debbie, I think you made a little worksheet for them for their 25 and 25, didn't you?
I did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Beautiful. So we'll have that. You can download that beneath this video. And I'm going to put a sale on. I think this morning I decided I had a course that I did not too long ago called Creation Consciousness, which is about being in that space of manifestation and all of the phases of it. And I think I'm going to give y'all 50% off of it. So I'll put the link to that and the coupon code below the video today too. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great month and we'll see you next month.